The low, celebratory hum within the Havenwood Community Art Gallery, usually a melody that resonated deep within Dr. Evelyn Hayes, confirming the quiet triumphs of her mission, was obliterated. A single blood-curdling shriek sliced through the warmth, instantly followed by the sinister whoosh of accelerant, greedily finding a spark, and then the ravenous, crackling symphony of unleashed flames. Dr. Evelyn Hayes, the Distinguished Federal Director of the National Arts and Equity Initiative. NAEAI, a position she'd earned through decades of unyielding advocacy and profound scholarship, was in Havenwood. Her purpose to deliver the keynote address at the opening of Visions of Tomorrow, the gallery's most eagerly anticipated event, its annual student art exhibition. Only moments before she had been immersed in the breathtaking charcoal portraits of Marcus Bell, a 12-year-old black artist whose talent was so preternaturally mature it seemed to channel generations of artistic lineage. His work was not just displayed, it was a vibrant, defiant heart beating at the center of the exhibition. Through the sudden chaotic sea of panicked faces, Evelyn saw the unthinkable. Marcus Bell's entire display, a meticulously curated series of portraits that courageously depicted unsung heroes of the civil rights movement alongside fiercely determined contemporary young activists, was now a raging inferno. Flames like predatory tongues licked at the canvases, transforming vibrant images of hope, resilience, and unvarnished truth into billowing clouds of ash and acrid, choking smoke. The heat, a physical assault, radiated outwards, driving the attendees back their expressions, a horrifying tableau of terror, disbelief, and a dawning, sickening comprehension. Fire, oh my God, fire. Someone call 911. A gallery docent, a young woman usually poised, shrieked, her fingers fumbling uselessly with her smartphone, her face a mask of sheer panic. Arthur Jenkins, the gallery director, a man whose perpetually anxious demeanor was usually attributable to the Sisyphean task of fundraising in an indifferent economy, blanched his spectacles askew. He stumbled past Evelyn, muttering, No, this can't be. Not after all the warnings. Oh, the insurance, the grants." His voice trailed off as he made a beeline, not for an exit, but towards the gallery's small, cluttered back office, a detail that snagged in Evelyn's mind, even amidst the escalating chaos. Evelyn was already in motion, her mind a well-oiled machine, honed by years of navigating crises, not just within the rarefied air of the art world, but through her agency's often perilous disaster relief, cultural heritage programs, retrieving and protecting art from war zones and natural disasters. Her priorities, stark and immediate, flashed through her consciousness like emergency beacons: the children. Marcus Bell, first and foremost, but also the dozens of other young artists, their families, their dreams. The art. Not just Marcus's, though its destruction felt like a targeted assassination of the spirit, but the hundreds of other irreplaceable student works, each a fragile testament to nascent creativity. The chilling certainty, a cold knot tightening in her stomach. This was no accident. The fire was too precise, its fury too concentrated, its origin too undeniably centered on Marcus Bell's politically charged and to a vocal powerful segment of this affluent, conservative suburban enclave controversial artwork. She spotted Marcus, a boy whose quiet, introspective nature belied a talent that soared far beyond his tender years. He stood frozen, a statue of disbelief, his wide eyes reflecting the monstrous dance of the flames, a dawning, heartbreaking understanding etching itself onto his young face. His mother, Althea Bell, a lioness in her advocacy for her son and for equitable arts education, was attempting to shield him her own face, a canvas of pale shock and incandescent fury. David Bell, Marcus's father, a history teacher whose lessons on social justice now felt brutally immediate, stood as a protective bulwark, his jaw clenched, his eyes scanning for danger. And then Evelyn's gaze locked onto her. Positioned with chilling deliberation near a side exit far enough from the immediate danger, but close enough to observe her handiwork, stood Karen Albright. A small, almost imperceptible smirk, a ghastly flicker of triumph played on her lips as she watched the flames consume Marcus's art. Karen Albright, president of the formidable Oak Haven Hills Homeowners Association, a self-proclaimed patron of the arts, a title she interpreted as ensuring art remained decorative, inoffensive, and preferably featured pastoral landscapes or well-dressed white figures from a bygone era, and the most vociferous vitriolic opponent of Marcus Bell's inclusion in this very exhibition. Albright had waged a relentless public campaign for weeks to have Marcus's portraits censored and removed, hysterically deeming them too political, divisive, and wholly inappropriate for a community gallery setting. Sorain, her insidious efforts had been decisively thwarted in no small part by a firm, unequivocal public statement from Evelyn's own federal office, reaffirming the gallery's sacrosanct right to artistic freedom and its crucial commitment to showcasing diverse voices, especially those of young, emerging artists of color. Evelyn's focus narrowed. Albright's smug satisfaction was a damning beacon. Yet, even as that certainty began to crystallize into cold resolve, a flicker of movement near the now roaring epicenter of the blaze snagged her peripheral vision. Arthur Jenkins, the gallery director, was briefly visible through a momentary parting in the dense, acrid smoke. He was looking back towards the inferno, his expression not merely one of panic, but something more complex, more furtive. Was it guilt, or a profound consuming fear? He then vanished abruptly towards the gallery's back offices. A tiny, unexpected seed of complexity, a potential misdirection in this unfolding tragedy, lodged itself in Evelyn's analytical mind. Evacuate everyone, evacuate immediately. Evelyn's voice, a resonant instrument trained by years of commanding lecture halls and addressing congressional committees, sliced through the cacophony of fear. Gallery staff, activate your emergency protocols. Account for all children. Marcus Althea David. Are you injured? She forged a path through the panicked exodus, reaching the Bell family. Althea was trying to soothe Marcus, who was now coughing, his eyes streaming from the smoke. We're okay. I think. Althea stammered, her gaze, however still fixed, with an expression of utter devastation on the inferno devouring her son's masterpieces. Just the smoke, but his art, his beautiful, powerful art. They burned my heroes, Dr. Hayes. They burned their faces. Marcus whispered, his voice, hoarse, choked with tears and smoke, his small body trembling. But I'll draw them again. I'll draw them bigger. They can't burn. The people. Can they? Evelyn's heart, a vessel usually guarded by professional composure, clenched with a fierce protective ache at his wounded resilience. Art can be recreated, Althea. She said, her tone gentle but imbued with an unwavering firmness. Lives cannot. Let's get you and Marcus out of this building. Now. As they navigated the frantic surge towards a designated emergency exit, a deafening roar emanated from the fire's core, followed by the sickening groan of tortured metal and splintering wood as a section of the gallery's high ceiling began to buckle. Marcus, despite his earlier brave words, cried out, his finger pointing shakily. My sketchbook, I left it. My new ideas, right by the display. He instinctively made a move to dart back towards the danger. Marcus, no. Althea screamed, her voice raw with terror. Evelyn reacted with a speed that belied her tailored suit and academic background. Her hand shot out, grabbing his arm in a vice-like grip. It's far too dangerous, Marcus. But she saw the desperate, pleading anguish in his eyes, the profound grief of an artist mourning not just the meticulously finished pieces, but the fragile, nascent seeds of future creation. In that split second, a flaming support beam wreathed in black smoke crashed down with devastating force precisely where they had been standing only moments before. Evelyn, with a surge of adrenaline, shoved Marcus and Althea forward, with all her strength instinctively shielding them with her own body as a shower of hot debris and burning embers rained down. The heat was a physical blow, scorching her skin, searing her lungs. Go now. Bay, she commanded, pushing them urgently towards David, who, his face a mask of grim determination, helped guide them through the doorway into the relative safety of the gallery's exterior courtyard. Taking one quick, searing glance back into the maelstrom, Evelyn registered the overpowering, unmistakable chemical odor of a potent accelerant far stronger and more insidious than the mere scent of burning canvas and wood. This was calculated. This was vicious. Outside, the night air was rent by the approaching wail of sirens, a discordant but welcome chorus. Fire Chief Henderson, a man whose craggy face spoke of countless battles against conflagrations, was already on site, barking orders his team moving with practiced efficiency. Chief Henderson. Evelyn stated, her voice tight, vibrating with a barely suppressed fury and the lingering rasp of smoke. Dr. Evelyn Hayes, Federal Director, National Arts and Equity Initiative. This fire was not accidental. This was a deliberate, targeted act. Someone used a significant quantity of accelerant specifically on the artwork of a 12-year-old black child, Marcus Bell. This is at minimum a potential federal hate crime and quite possibly an act of domestic terrorism against a cultural institution. I need this entire gallery and a significant perimeter secured immediately as a federal crime scene. No one in or out except authorized personnel. I am formally requesting the immediate deployment and assistance of the ATF's National Response Team and the FBI's Civil Rights Division and their specialist art crime team. My office, the NAEI, will be taking a lead role in the federal investigation into the cultural terrorism aspect of this attack. Chief Henderson, a seasoned veteran accustomed to assessing situations, rapidly took in Evelyn's authoritative demeanor, the gravity in her eyes, the official NAEI credentials she presented, and the clear, horrifying evidence of a malicious, strategically targeted fire. He nodded grimly, his expression hardening. Understood, Director Hayes. We'll secure the scene meticulously and preserve all potential evidence. My arson investigators are already on site and will begin their preliminary assessment. We will coordinate fully and seamlessly with all incoming federal authorities. While the Havenwood Fire Department battled the blaze, successfully containing it before it could consume the entire historic gallery building, but not before Marcus Bell's entire Visions of Tomorrow series was reduced to charred, heartbreaking embers, Evelyn turned her laser focus to her primary suspects. Karen Albright had, with predictable cowardice, vanished from her smug vantage point on the periphery. But Arthur Jenkins, the gallery director, was now being tended to by paramedics, looking disheveled and distraught. Evelyn approached FBI Special Agent Miles Corbin, a familiar face from previous, though less volatile, NAEI collaborations, as he arrived with the first wave of federal agents. Corbin was a man of few words, but his sharp, analytical eyes missed little. Agent Corbin, thank you for the rapid response. Evelyn began, her voice still raspy. Our primary suspect is Ms. Karen Albright, president of the Oak Haven Hills Homeowners Association. She has a deeply documented history of extreme animosity towards the targeted artist and his work. She made public threats against the gallery and the exhibition. She was present at the scene, visibly pleased by the destruction. I want her located and detained for questioning immediately. And I want a federal search warrant for her residence, her offices, and any properties or businesses associated with her, including her estranged husband's demolition company. We have information suggesting potential access to accelerants and incendiary materials through that connection. She paused, then added, Also, Agent Corbin, I need you to look closely at the gallery director, Arthur Jenkins. He was near the origin point just before ignition, acting erratically. He's been under significant documented financial pressure. Marcus's art and Albright's subsequent campaign against it caused some major donors to withdraw pledges. His statements about insurance and grants moments after the fire started were unsettling. It could be a desperate, misguided attempt to resolve a problem, or even a more common motive like insurance fraud, though my gut tells me Albright's malice is the stronger current here. We need to eliminate or confirm his involvement swiftly. Corbin, his usual laconic demeanor now edged with a steely resolve that mirrored Evelyn's, nodded. Albright's type, Director Hayes, always believes their wealth and influence places them above the law. They often underestimate the reach and determination of federal agencies when a line like this is crossed. Not this time. Jenkins noted. We'll bring him in for a detailed statement immediately. We've had Albright on our peripheral radar for some time now for other, let's call them overzealous community standard enforcements that bordered on harassment and potential civil rights violations. This, however, is a quantum leap into major felony territory. We'll find her, and we'll scrutinize Jenkins thoroughly. Firefighters, their faces grimed with soot, managed to contain the blaze, but the main exhibition hall was a scene of devastation. Marcus's entire Visions of Tomorrow series, The powerful faces of past and present heroes was gone, transformed into a pile of sodden, blackened ruin. Jenkins, when questioned later that evening by Agent Corbin and a sharp local detective, was a picture of distress. Yet his answers, while laced with anxiety, began to form a coherent, if unfortunate, narrative. He admitted to the immense financial strain the gallery was under, exacerbated by Albright's relentless campaign. She was furious. Jenkins recounted, his hands trembling as he accepted a bottle of water. I had a terrible argument with her just yesterday afternoon. She was unhinged. She said the gallery needed purifying, that Marcus's art was a cancer on the community. I told her she was being extremist, that art is meant to challenge. She just smiled. A cold smile. It scared me. He explained his presence near the display. I heard a strange pop, a crackling sound, just before the main whoosh. I thought perhaps one of the new tracklight fixtures had shorted out a fire hazard. I went to investigate. Then, it was like the air itself exploded into flames. He readily produced security access logs and time-stamped emails showing he was in his locked office on a video conference call with a potential out-of-state donor, a call the donor later confirmed during the critical 10-minute window before the fire's ignition. His alibi, though perhaps conveniently placing him away from the direct act, appeared solid and verifiable. The brief, uncomfortable suspicion Evelyn had harbored towards him began to dissipate her focus, returning with unwavering, intensified conviction to Karen Albright. Albright, true to form, had disappeared as if into thin air. We need to find her, Corbin, and we need to do it now, before she can get further away or destroy evidence, Evelyn urged, pacing the makeshift command post, set up in a cordoned-off section of the gallery's parking lot. The acrid smell of smoke still hung heavy. And while your team canvasses for her, I need my NAEI analysts and your FBI researchers to conduct an exhaustive deep dive into her background. Financial records, property deeds, old news archives, any known associates, any past legal entanglements, however minor. Is there anything similar to this in her past anywhere she's lived or wielded influence? Corbin's team initiated a multi-pronged search for Albright. Meanwhile, Evelyn, working in tandem with a brilliant NAEI senior analyst, Maya Sharma, who specialized in uncovering extremist networks and cultural crimes, began their meticulous trawl through digital databases and public records. Hours later, as dawn threatened to break, hunched over a flickering laptop screen in the stark, impersonal environment of a borrowed municipal office, Maya let out a low whistle. Director Hayes, look at this. Year. She pulled up a digitized newspaper article from a small, obscure Pennsylvania town dated almost 15 years prior. The headline read, Library Arson Scare, linked to controversial modern art exhibit. The article detailed an anonymous bomb threat phoned into a local public library, forcing its immediate evacuation and the cancellation of an exhibition of modern art pieces. Karen Albright, then a prominent resident of that town and a vocal member of a concerned citizens group, had publicly and vehemently protested the exhibition, labeling the artwork degenerate and an affront to community values. No charges had ever been filed due to a lack of direct prosecutable evidence, but the article explicitly named Karen Albright as a person of interest who had relentlessly demanded the exhibition's cancellation and had made inflammatory statements at public council meetings. Corbin, Evelyn said into her phone moments later, her voice grim and devoid of any surprise, only a chilling affirmation. I think we have a clear pattern of behavior emerging. Our esteemed patron of the arts appears to have a documented history of escalating from aggressive protest and public denunciation to more direct criminal action when her particular aesthetic and ideological sensibilities are offended. This isn't her first foray into cultural intimidation. Just as she disconnected the call, a junior FBI agent, young and eager, hurried over to Agent Corbin, who was coordinating search teams. Sir, we just picked up a confirmed ping on Albright's burner phone, one we flagged earlier from her known associates. She's at a private airfield executive wings about 20 miles west of Havenwood. A Gulfstream G280, privately chartered, just filed an expedited flight plan. Destination, Georgetown, Cayman Islands. Shh, let's move, Corbin commanded, already striding towards his vehicle, his team scrambling to follow. Alert local PD at the airfield for immediate detainment if possible. We're en route, code 3. The arrest at the private airfield was swift, efficient, and almost disappointingly devoid of high drama. Karen Albright, impeccably dressed in expensive travel attire, even in her evident haste, offered a token theatrical protest as FBI agents and local police converged on her as she was about to board the jet. "This is an outrage, a complete misunderstanding. I am a respected member of this community. I have a business meeting." In her hastily packed designer luggage, authorities found the expected several changes of expensive clothes, a significant amount of cash in various international currencies, and a set of newly and expertly forged identity documents under an assumed name. But there was something else, something far more significant, tucked away in a bespoke, locked leather attaché case that required a warrant and a specialist to open not just a simple list of art galleries, but several heavily encrypted flash drives and a thin, meticulously kept coded ledger. "What are these, Ms. Albright?" Corbin asked, holding up one of the innocuous-looking flash drives, its potential contents now the subject of intense speculation. Albright's lips thinned into a bloodless line. "Those are my personal records. Private business, nothing that concerns you." Back at the FBI regional field office, a team of their top cybercrime specialists began the painstaking process of bypassing the military-grade encryption on the drives. The hours ticked by. Althea Bell called Evelyn, her voice frayed, stretched thin with exhaustion and anxiety. "Marcus, he's so quiet, Evelyn. He's drawing, constantly drawing. He says he has to, that the faces are clearer now in his mind than ever before, but he jumps at every sudden loud noise, every unexpected shadow. David is... He's beyond furious. He's talking about moving about, leaving Havenwood, this town that let this happen to our son. I just don't know what to do, Evelyn. How do we protect him from this hate?" "You stay strong, Althea," Evelyn said, her own resolve hardening into something akin to tempered steel. "You tell Marcus that his courage, his determination to keep creating is an inspiration to all of us. We are going to fight this Althea with everything we have. His voice, his art, matters more now than ever before, and we will ensure it is heard and protected." The encrypted drives finally yielded their poisoned secrets late into the second night of the investigation. The coded ledger, when cross-referenced with the gigabytes of data extracted from the drives, painted a horrifying, sprawling picture of something far more organized and sinister than one wealthy, enraged woman's act of hateful arson. Karen Albright wasn't just a lone, albeit dangerous arsonist. She was a key financier, a significant regional coordinator, and an ideological driving force for a clandestine, nationwide extremist network. They called themselves, with chilling grandiosity, the Purity Sentinels. Their avowed mission to cleanse American culture of art and expression they deemed unpatriotic, subversive, anti-family, or racially and morally divisive, primarily targeting artists of color, LGBTQ+ creators, and institutions that dared to showcase challenging progressive work. The documents on the drives weren't just lists of potential future targets. They detailed a disturbing history of past actions, coordinated online harassment campaigns, doxing of artists, acts of vandalism, intimidation of gallery boards and library committees, and now clearly arson, across at least a dozen states. The Havenwood Gallery fire was intended to be a bold, terrifying statement, a new, more aggressive escalation in their cultural war. Evelyn felt a profound, icy chill crawl up her spine, a cold dread settling in her stomach. This wasn't just about Havenwood. This was a coordinated, ideologically driven assault on artistic freedom and cultural diversity across the entire nation. The scope of the threat had just magnified exponentially. "Corbin," she said into the secure line, her voice low, urgent, and filled with a terrible gravity. "This is bigger than we ever imagined. Much, much bigger. We're not just looking at a hate crime anymore. We're looking at a sophisticated, well-funded domestic terrorism organization with a national footprint and a clear, violent agenda." Corbin, on the other end, let out a string of expletives that for him amounted to a profound expression of shock and concern. "We need to escalate this to FBI headquarters, to Homeland Security immediately. This just went from a significant local outrage to a major national security issue. We need to roll up this entire network. The manhunt for Albright's co-conspirators. The other key figures within the Purity Sentinels began immediately, a silent, sweeping federal operation, unfolding across multiple states, involving dozens of agents and analysts. Meanwhile, the formal interrogation of Karen Albright commenced. Evelyn, invoking NAEI's explicit mandate to protect cultural heritage and ensure freedom of artistic expression, sat in a formidable, unwavering presence. Albright initially was all haughty defiance and indignant denial, attempting to maintain her carefully constructed facade of the aggrieved patron of the arts and community pillar. This is an absolute outrage, a politically motivated witch hunt, orchestrated by Dr. Hayes and her radical taxpayer-funded federal agency. You are attempting to silence legitimate conservative voices and demonize those of us who stand for traditional American values. Ms. Albright. Evelyn interjected, her voice calm, precise, and as unyielding as granite. We have your encrypted communications with the Leadership Council of the Purity Sentinels. We have the names, the locations, the operational plans. We know about the other galleries, the other artists, the libraries, the community centers they've targeted and plan to target. We know about the intricate funding mechanisms, the recruitment strategies, the coordination of violent acts. This isn't about conservative voices, Miss Albright. This is about a meticulously planned campaign of domestic terror designed to silence and intimidate through violence and fear. As Agent Corbin methodically and relentlessly laid out the damning, irrefutable evidence, multiple eyewitness accounts placing her near Marcus's display, moments before the fire, crystal-clear security footage from a nearby hardware store showing her purchasing several cans of high-grade paint thinner, a known and potent accelerant the day before the exhibition, forensic traces of that same unique accelerant compound found on expensive shoes seized from her home, the coded ledger detailing financial transactions to known extremist operatives, the decrypted files from the flash drives outlining future targets and past attacks, her own meticulously kept journals filled with hateful, obsessive rants about Marcus Bell's subversive anti-American art and her repeated vows to purify and cleanse the community gallery, and finally, her foiled escape attempt. Karen Albright's carefully constructed composure began to visibly then catastrophically crack. At last, the dam of her self-control burst. In a torrent of venomous, unrepentant self-justification, her true, twisted motive erupted in all its horrifying clarity. That boy, his so-called art, it was a disease, a contagion. She spat her eyes, usually cold and calculating, now glittering with a disturbing, almost ecstatic, fanatical light. It was infecting our community, our children, with ugliness, with resentment, with deviant politics. Art is meant to be beautiful, uplifting, patriotic. It should celebrate harmony, tradition, and established order, not sow seeds of division and chaos. His grotesque portraits, they were an affront, a desecration of everything, pure good and decent in our society. I did what was necessary. I was cleansing the temple. Our sacred culture is under siege from these foreign elements, these radical influences. The Purity Sentinels are the true patriots, the guardians of America's soul. Someone has to have the courage to fight back against this relentless cultural pollution, this erosion of our heritage. I am a patriot. Her confession, a horrifying, unvarnished articulation of cultural fascism, profound racist bigotry, and a chillingly detached embrace of violence, was recorded in its entirety, becoming a cornerstone of the federal government's sweeping case against her and her network. The trial of Karen Albright and several other key figures in the Purity Sentinels network, held months later under intense national and international media scrutiny, became a landmark event. A national reckoning with the insidious issues of artistic freedom, censorship, domestic terrorism, hate crimes, and the dangerous, often underestimated ways in which prejudice and extremist ideology can fester and metastasize, even in the most affluent, ostensibly civilized communities. The prosecution, led by a high-profile, razor-sharp U.S. attorney armed with Albright's own damning words and the mountain of meticulously corroborated digital and forensic evidence, painted a devastating picture of a widespread, well-funded conspiracy dedicated to cultural warfare through criminal means. Dr. Evelyn Hayes, in her capacity as NAEI director, provided crucial, compelling expert testimony on the profound cultural significance of Marcus Bell's art, the historical context of art as a tool for social change, the NAEI's vital role in protecting diverse artistic expression, and the devastating, chilling impact of such calculated acts of cultural terrorism on artist communities and the nation's democratic ideals. Marcus Bell himself, accompanied by the unwavering support of Althea, and David found the extraordinary courage to testify. His voice, though quiet and at times trembling with the enormity of the experience, resonated with a profound, unshakable dignity and an articulacy that captivated the hushed courtroom. I drew people I admired, people I learned about from my dad, from books from my community. He told the jurors, his gaze steady. People who fought for what's right, for justice, for everyone to be treated fairly. Some of them were famous, like Dr. King and Rosa Parks. Some were young people today, activists, even some of my own classmates trying to make the world better. Their faces, they tell important stories. I just wanted to share those stories. When Ms. Albright and her group burned my art, they tried to burn those stories to erase those faces. But stories don't burn that easy. The truth doesn't burn. He paused, then looked directly at Karen Albright, his expression not one of hate, but of a deep, sorrowful understanding that seemed far beyond his years. You can burn canvas, you can burn paint and charcoal, but you can't burn truth, and you can't burn the hope those people represent. His testimony and his quiet, powerful resilience moved the jury, and indeed much of the nation, following the trial, to tears. The jury returned guilty verdicts on all federal charges for Karen Albright and her primary co-conspirators: arson, domestic terrorism, conspiracy to commit hate crimes, and multiple egregious civil rights violations. The judge, in delivering Albright's sentence of life in federal prison without the possibility of parole, condemned her actions and those of the Purity Sentinels in the strongest possible terms, calling them an insidious and cowardly assault, not just on a child and his art, but on the very foundations of a free, diverse, and democratic society. A deliberate attempt to silence dissent, erase inconvenient truths, and impose a narrow, intolerant worldview through violence, intimidation, and terror. Albright's vast personal fortune was seized by federal authorities, with a significant portion allocated by court order to establish and endow a new national Phoenix Fund to be administered by the NAEI. Its mission to provide grants and support to young underrepresented artists whose work had been targeted by censorship, vandalism, or hate, and to help rebuild and secure cultural institutions victimized by such attacks. In the aftermath of the Havenwood Gallery arson and the subsequent dismantling of the Purity Sentinels' leadership, Dr. Evelyn Hayes, working tirelessly with a hard-won bipartisan coalition of lawmakers, arts organizations, civil rights groups, and educational advocates, spearheaded the complex and often contentious legislative process that led to the passage of the landmark Artistic Freedom and Cultural Equity Restoration Act. It quickly became popularly known in tribute to the young artist who had endured so much and inspired so many as Marcus's Law. This sweeping, comprehensive federal legislation established clear, robust, and unambiguous federal protections for artistic freedom, with significantly enhanced criminal penalties for acts of censorship, vandalism, or terrorism targeting artists or cultural institutions based on the content of their work, the identity of the artists, or the communities they represented. Created new, substantial federal grant programs to be administered by the NAEI, specifically designed to support the creation, exhibition, and preservation of art from diverse, marginalized, and underrepresented communities, and to provide funding for enhanced security measures, threat assessment training, and resilience planning for galleries, museums, libraries, and community cultural centers nationwide. Mandated the development and implementation of new inclusive K-12 arts education curricula to be overseen jointly by the NAEI and the Department of Education, with a strong focus on promoting media literacy, critical thinking about art and propaganda, fostering understanding of the vital role of art in advancing social justice and cultural understanding, and celebrating the diverse artistic heritage of the United States. Established a new NAEI rapid response team equipped to provide immediate on-the-ground support, expert resources, temporary relocation for artists under threat, and vigorous advocacy for artists and cultural institutions targeted by hate censorship or intimidation. The Havenwood Community Art Gallery, though deeply scarred by the fire and the trauma it represented, refused to be silenced or defined by the act of terror. Fueled by an unprecedented outpouring of national support, bolstered significantly by the first grants from the newly established Phoenix Fund and countless private donations from individuals and foundations across the country, it was painstakingly rebuilt. Its exhibition spaces were thoughtfully redesigned to be even more inclusive, more accessible, more secure, and more resolutely dedicated to showcasing challenging, diverse, and thought-provoking art. The undeniable centerpiece of its grand reopening exhibition, held exactly 1 year after the devastating arson, was a stunning new series of portraits by Marcus Bell. His new works were even larger, bolder, more powerful, more resilient, more unflinchingly direct in their depiction of truth and justice than his first celebrated series. His charcoal lines, once fluid and lyrical, now possessed a new fierce knowing quality, a gravitas born of experience. The eyes of his subjects seemed to gaze out from the canvases with an even greater intensity, challenging viewers demanding recognition bearing witness. His work and his remarkable story of courage and perseverance in the face of profound hatred became a national symbol of hope, resilience, and the enduring power of art. Marcus, however, carried the indelible weight of the event with a maturity that was both inspiring and heartbreaking. At the crowded, emotional reopening of the Havenwood Gallery, standing beside his new portraits, he confessed quietly to Evelyn, "I still get scared sometimes, Dr. Hayes. When I pick up a piece of charcoal for a second, I remember the heat, the smell of the smoke, the way the faces in my drawings looked when they were burning. I still have nightmares about it sometimes." He paused, his gaze shifting to his new powerful portrait of a young climate activist, her eyes filled with fierce determination. "But then, I remember why I started drawing them in the first place. I remember what you told me. I have to show their faces. I have to keep telling the real stories, the important stories, even if my hand shakes a little when I start." Dr. Evelyn Hayes made it a point to visit the new Havenwood Gallery often, and many others like it across the country that had been inspired, supported, or secured by the provisions of Marcus's law. The fight, she knew with a weary certainty, was far from over. Just that morning, before traveling to Havenwood for the anniversary, she had been on an urgent conference call with NAEI lawyers and a terrified librarian in a small Midwestern town. A local extremist group, using tactics chillingly reminiscent of Karen Albright's early playbook, was orchestrating an aggressive campaign of intimidation and threats, demanding the removal of children's books, featuring LGBTQ+ families, from the public library shelves. A small but vocal faction in Havenwood itself disturbingly was already vociferously protesting Marcus's law as an infringement on local control and federal overreach promoting a radical agenda. The struggle against censorship, against prejudice, against those who would seek to silence dissent or erase difference through violence, intimidation, and fear was a continuous, relentless, and often exhausting one. The Purity Sentinels' leadership was incarcerated, their network disrupted, but their poisonous ideology, Evelyn knew, still lurked in the shadowed corners of society, waiting for new avatars. But as she stood now in the beautifully rebuilt Havenwood Gallery, before Marcus Bell's extraordinary new portraits, watching young artists from every conceivable background, confidently sharing their unique visions, their sometimes uncomfortable truths, their vibrant dreams for the future, she felt a profound, unshakable surge of hope. She knew that their voices were now better protected, their creative spaces more secure, their right to express themselves more robustly defended than ever before. She placed a hand gently on Marcus's shoulder, feeling the quiet strength in his young frame. "Marcus," she said, her voice filled with a deep, abiding warmth and respect. "Your art, your courage, reminds me every single day why I do this work, why all of us who believe in a just and equitable world must keep fighting, keep speaking out. It's not just pictures, is it? It's truth. It's resilience. It's courage. It's a light that can illuminate the darkest corners. Don't ever let anyone or anything dim that extraordinary light you carry within you." Marcus Bell looked up at Dr. Evelyn Hayes, the director who had stood by him, fought for him, and championed his voice. A small, determined, and incredibly wise smile graced his lips. "I won't, Dr. Hayes. He promised, his voice clear and strong. I really won't. They tried to extinguish a vision, but instead they ignited a fire in all of us. A different kind of fire, one that builds, not burns. Evelyn Hayes knew with every fiber of her being that he was right. The flames in the gallery a year ago had been horrifying, destructive, a manifestation of pure hate. But from those bitter ashes, something powerful, something transformative, something profoundly enduring had undeniably risen. A movement indeed. And the vital, necessary work continued, fueled by the unquenchable fire of art, truth, and the human spirit.